Hi everyone, welcome back to another speed build, or welcome in if you're new. Today we're building, firstly I just want to say hello, it's been a while. I've just felt so busy and so drained lately, but I want to try and get back into the routine of things again. I was away in Scotland in general a couple of weeks ago. So this build is actually inspired by one of my Airbnb stays. This one was just outside Edinburgh. It had like a wee cabin at the back of the house, and it was like a wee tiny living type cabin. It just had everything you really needed, and it was just handy to get a bus right outside to Edinburgh. So we done that one night and ended up going on a ghost tour. And if you follow me on Instagram, you will have seen a post that I actually done with my dog. She is 10 now, so she gets really tired during walking around the big cities and the hustle and bustle as well. She's just not the biggest fan, so I got myself a backpack for her. And before I actually went on the trip, I got her used to the backpack and just walked around the house for a bit. Now, bear in mind, my dog is actually about 20 kilos, so walking around Edinburgh, and it was actually really warm that day, and I was absolutely roasting with her on my back. But Dakota was happy enough just sitting on my back watching the world go by. I did get some funny looks, but so what? She needed the wee rest. Anyway, so yeah, this build is actually inspired by the place I stayed at. As I said, it was just like a wee tiny home at the back of their house. We had the full garden to ourselves, and they actually had a pizza oven, which I would have loved to have used one if we had a longer stay, but we're just there for 2 nights. But it was so perfect. Handy enough. Yeah, the garden was absolutely beautiful. They kept it so well. The amount of flowers, and this build just does not do it justice at all. Obviously I didn't see the inside of their house, but we did get access to the wee cabin area, and then I do eventually build like a washroom, so that was there as well. Part of that was actually a pantry, but I just couldn't really build that in The Sims, so I just went for the full washroom area. And yeah, I think it turned out pretty enough similar. Obviously it's immaculate. It was very nice. I would highly recommend. I think just on Airbnb it's called The Cabin near Edinburgh. But yeah, it was very nice. Our whole trip was actually, we started off in Inverness and went round. I would usually go to Airbnbs when we go away. It just means you have the freedom and you can come and go as you please. Obviously you can with hotels as well, but I always take Dakota with me because I just can't be without her at all. After lockdown, we've just grew social anxiety away from each other, so she goes and I go where she goes. And I did actually do another build with Edinburgh, like part of the actual city. I'll link that up above. This is about the 4th time I've been to Edinburgh, and again I'll say it, I love it so much. I just love the old history. But yeah, no, we did go to Inverness. We started in Inverness and then went up the north coast, and then went over to Skye, but we just didn't get enough time, which has actually put me in the mood to buy a van, or a cheap enough van, and convert it into a camper van. So that is my next project, I think. Once I find the perfect van that is suitable for me, price wise, mileage wise, everything. So that's my latest obsession right now. And if you're anything like me, you have about 200 different hobbies that you just cannot keep up with, and they're never cheap hobbies, I tell you, and I cannot afford expensive hobbies. But yeah, so if I find myself a cheap van, that is my next hobby. Anyway, back to the build. So you'll see that I am just trying to figure out the outline and the entryway that we walked through. So it was kind of like a enclosed general area. This part was actually a direct link to the back garden where we just entered. We didn't have to go through their house or anything like that. So yeah, we just went down that I don't even want to say it's an alleyway, but just general garden area, and then into their garden. And it had a lovely wee sitting area and a wee fire pit in the middle, and it was just so beautiful. But anyway, I'll just leave you with the rest of the music now and let you watch the speed build. And I hope to get a better routine happening lately. It's just hard to find the time at the minute, but yeah, thanks for sticking around, and I hope to see you soon. Bye! bye.